However, we do know that global energy systems, food systems and supply chains will be deeply affected. In times of crisis, the role of governments is more important and more relevant than ever. What is also needed is a summit like this one to go beyond crisis management and to look into constructive ways we can build our common future.
We're still putting 162 million tons into it every single day, and the accumulated amount is now trapping as much extra heat as would be released by 600,000 Hiroshima-class atomic bombs exploding every single day on the Earth. That's what's boiling the oceans, creating these atmospheric rivers and the rain bombs, and sucking the moisture out of the land and creating the droughts and melting the ice and raising the sea level and causing these waves of climate refugees predicted to reach 1.
But congratulations today, the honorees, including your wife, who I understand is birthday today? Well, look, my wife has a rule in her family. When somebody's birthday, you sing happy birthday. You ready? Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Valen. Happy birthday to you. Well, it's hell turning 30, but you got...
It's immoral for oil and gas companies to be making record profits from this energy crisis on the back of the poorest people and communities and at a massive cost to the climate. The combined profits of the largest energy companies in the first quarter of this year are close to $100 billion. I urge all governments to tax these excessive profits and use the funds to support the most vulnerable people through these difficult times. And I urge people everywhere to send a clear message to the fossil fuel industry and their financiers that this grotesque greed is punishing the poorest and most vulnerable people while destroying our only common home, the planet. Every country is part of this energy crisis, and all countries are paying attention to what others are doing. There is no place for hypocrisy. Developing countries don't lack reasons to invest in renewables. Many of them are living with the severe impacts of the climate crisis, including storms, wildfires, floods, and droughts. What they lack are concrete, workable options. And meanwhile, developing countries are urging them to invest in renewables without providing enough social, technical, or financial support. And some of those same developed countries are introducing universal subsidies at gas stations, while others are reopening coal plants. It is difficult to justify such steps, even on a temporary basis.
When I'm faced with a challenge, I work my hardest to deliver. But this next challenge is the most important one of my life. Sheffield has a proud history, showing grit and determination in overcoming adversities. And it was the wit and generosity of the people of Sheffield that made me feel welcome when I first got here in 1980, the year the lead mill opened. I chose to study accounting in Sheffield, but it soon became the city where I launched my creative career. And it was here where I was inspired to run 43 marathons around the UK for sport relief. I'm standing to be the next Labour MP for Sheffield Central, to support the city that supported me, to take the fight to the Tories and get Keir Starmer into number 10. 12 years of Tory rule has told Sheffield that its voice doesn't matter. Sure Start centres, gone. Number of doctors and nurses, down. Police on the beat, cut. Sheffield is being held back. A Labour government will embolden Sheffield to achieve its true potential, and I believe I am the right person to build on Paul Blomfield's tireless work for this city. Labour ideals of fairness and equality have always been at the core of my life. Opportunities that began right here in Sheffield have encouraged me to travel the world, performing in 4 languages in 45 countries, bringing people together, because I believe in making connections, not breaking connections. I believe that everyone in the world has the right to a fair chance in life. A good school that inspires them to explore, where no child sits hungry through lessons. A decent job that pays not just enough to cover the bills, but that fulfills them. A well-funded national health service that will take care of them whenever they need. And a focus on climate justice to create a fairer, more just and equal world for us all. This is what I will fight for and more as your voice in Parliament, fighting for this community to have fair chance and have its voice heard. So please join me in taking on this great challenge. For Labour, for Sheffield. Thank you. Oh yes, and I happen to be trans.
Stephanopoulos is down in Lower Manhattan today. George, I don't know if you heard a little earlier me raise this question, which was actually raised by ABC's Jackie Judd as we look at these areas down below and the video of where the towers used to stand and where is all the rubble gone. And have you been able to, is there any way you can answer that question?
I'm sorry, Peter, I didn't get the question.
Okay, I apologize. Jackie Judd and several other people keep asking us, when you look at where the towers used to stand, there is surprisingly so little rubble. Where did all the rubble go?
It's a very good question, Peter, and I have asked some people who've been doing some of the rescue and recovery work this morning. If you look behind me, you can see the very remains, the skeletal remains of the World Trade Center. And one volunteer, Robert Gerlinski, explained to me the reason there's so little rubble is that all of it simply fell down into the ground and was pulverized, evaporated. Now,
believe me, most the people sitting in Downing Street at the moment are not talking about COVID. And at the G7 and the G20, I think you won't get the focus you need unless it's clear two things. One, that there is an ongoing challenge and opportunity. And I think that is not just about COVID. It's about the fact that we are going to have a whole slew of new vaccines, injectables, that are going to deal with some of the worst diseases in the world, that give us the opportunity to make big changes in the health of the world. And if you want the politicians to focus, they need to think, look, this is coming down the track soon, because if you tell them about a future pandemic, they'll kind of go, yeah, no. I think there's a huge impetus now for a national digital infrastructure. Digitization in healthcare is, I think, one of the great game changers. You know, we should be helping countries to develop a national digital infrastructure, which they will need with these new vaccines. And then, you know, finally, it's also about showing people and showing the political leadership that you can make a positive difference to your healthcare system by adopting these measures, because they've got an impact beyond any particular disease or pandemic. So I think if you want to keep the political focus, and I agree it's vital that you do, you've got to show people that this is a continuing issue, right? It's not a future issue, it's here and now. It's got a broad set of implications, and there are a set of solutions that COVID has taught us arising out of the challenges of COVID, to which, if we apply the right political will, we can make our healthcare systems better, not just for pandemic and disease, but more generally for the health of the population. If you do that, they'll think there are votes in it, and you know, if there are votes in it, they'll focus.
You also want those for you, man? Wie sieht's denn aus mit der Badstraße?
Let's just ask you quickly, you have to choose now between Davos or Westminster.
Davos.
Why?
Because Westminster is too constrained, and you know it's closed, and we're not having meaning. Once you get out of Westminster, whether it's Davos or anywhere else, you actually engage with people that you can see working with in the future. Westminster is just a tribal shouting place.
Good morning and welcome to the Church of St Margaret of Antioch in Toxteth. And today is Transgender Day of Visibility. My name is Reverend Bingo Allison and I am a non-binary transgender priest in the Church of England. As part of our commemoration of Transgender Day of Visibility, we have a morning prayer service that we're going to read now. Most of the liturgy is either directly quoted from scripture or is written by myself.
I just published my Yearhead 2023 letter looking at what's going to happen in the next 12 months and beyond. Life is changing. I'm about to become a grandfather. I reflect on the challenges we have right now with climate change getting worse, the Ukraine war, tough economic cycle, but it's hopefully uplifting because I also share great innovations. A great example is gene therapy could cure HIV, an AI-powered ultrasound machine that will help save lives of moms and newborns. Climate technologies that will make it so the emissions from buildings go down quite dramatically. I'm excited that we can get back making progress on tough issues. I hope you'll take a few minutes to read why I think we can make the future a lot better than the past. You can check it out at gatesnotes.com.
Powerful entities in the world, after thousands of years, during which humans were the rulers of the world, authority and power will shift away from humans to computers, and most humans will become economically useless and politically powerless. Already today, we are beginning to see the creation of a new class of humans, the useless class. Just as the Industrial Revolution in the 19th century created the new working class, the proletariat, so now the artificial intelligence revolution is beginning to create the useless class.
We're developing, through technology, an ability for consumers to measure their own carbon footprint. What does that mean? That's where are they traveling? How are they traveling? What are they eating? What are they consuming on the platform? So, individual carbon footprint tracker. Stay tuned. We don't have it operational yet, but this is something that we're working on.
Выпила.
Слушай, Тина, я тебя прошу, мы договариваемся аккуратно.
Я всю правду, я самую красивую. Потому что люди за много лет ослепли от моей красоты. Мейхер там же, я понимаю. Сашка Пономарёшка, Скрипка Олег бегал, Сережа Лазарев, ну тот, правда, чисто по спорту. Таких людей не бывает. Ближайшее к тебе это Влада Яму. Вот красивый мужчина, скажи, ты голосовал за Секундочку, я не Зеленский, я Тина.
Here at WEF, I believe we're discussing, there's a lot of discussion about what the new world order will be, or how, even in the context of our new Helsinki, how do we work towards that new normative international order that allows us to address our differences and disputes as the civilized world. And I believe perhaps we are at the moment in such a hyper-partisan, hyper-polarized time that we're not going to be able to form that new Helsinki today. But I hope going forward we are able to do, we must form and improve our normative and international institutional order internationally so that we can address these complaints. I hope this time round, once we're building this new world order or new rules-based order, the voice of the global south and the developing world is included.
Representative Hartman, let me go to you.
All right, let me first enthusiastically endorse the last comments that were made. And when we get to the end of this conversation and talk about a new world order, the global south is in the world, and I think we may have overlooked that a bit. Going back.
As you say, cardiology, we have now in a clinic a super exciting program when we inject mRNA in people's heart after heart attack to grow back new blood vessels to help revascularize the heart. So it's a bit like science fiction medicine, but that's what is really exciting to me.
But the other side of this is that right now, Moderna, though it has this pipeline, has one commercial product. And that's the Spikevax. That's the actual COVID vaccination. So that's the irony of COVID, is it really has in some ways allowed you to go and develop these other areas because of the revenues that came through the door.
You're 100% right.
I'm honored to stand here today with dedicated colleagues from within the Department of Justice as well as beyond it to announce a historic settlement with Pfizer Incorporated, a pharmaceutical manufacturer, and its subsidiary Pharmacia and Upjohn company, arising out of civil and criminal allegations relating to Pfizer's allegedly illegal promotion of various drugs, most notably Bextra. In a combination civil and criminal settlement, Pfizer has agreed to pay $2.3 billion.
You could be suffering from generalized anxiety disorder.
Paxil is just one of the drugs at the heart of this case. An antidepressant, the drug company GlaxoSmithKline promoted it as a treatment for depression in children, even though it was never cleared for use by anyone under the age of 18. This is called off-label marketing, and it's illegal. For this and other breaches, GSK has been fined $3 billion.
Good afternoon, everyone. You're watching the Financial News Network. I'm Hillary Russo. Shares of Pfizer are down on a Bloomberg report that the drug maker reached a final settlement in lawsuits over tests of an antibiotic on Nigerian children. According to the report, the two lawsuits said that Pfizer used an unproven antibiotic Trovan on children in 1996. The suits say that Pfizer did not warn parents about the risks. Pfizer shares are down 1.82% or 35 cents to $18.84. For more on the latest financial news, stay tuned to the Financial News Network. I'm Hillary Russo.
I'm Christy Duffy for Smart Trend News. GlaxoSmithKline agreeing to pay approximately $460 million in order to settle the majority of lawsuits that alleged its Avandia diabetes drug can cause heart attacks and strokes.
The last hurdle of a decade-long compensation claim battle. 17-year-old Shamsu undergoes a DNA test to prove he's a victim of a failed drug trial by the pharmaceutical company Pfizer that happened 15 years ago in Kano State, Nigeria. 11 children were killed and several more injured when Pfizer tested out a drug called Trovan on 200 children. The drug was supposed to treat a deadly regional outbreak of meningitis. Pfizer agreed to pay $75 million in compensation in 2009.
It seems like only yesterday. When I started skating at 8 years old, I never thought I'd experience the thrill of winning a medal. With all the great memories has come another thing I thought I'd never experience, the pain of osteoarthritis.
Vioxx is here, a prescription medicine for osteoarthritis pain. With one little pill a day, Vioxx can provide powerful 24-hour relief. Vioxx specifically targets only the COX-2 enzyme, a key source of arthritis pain. People with allergic reactions such as asthma to aspirin or other arthritis medicines should not take Vioxx. In rare cases, serious stomach problems such as bleeding can occur without warning. Tell your doctor if you have liver or kidney problems. For more information, talk to your doctor about once daily Vioxx for the relief of osteoarthritis pain.
Perhaps my biggest victory is to be able to plan my day around my life instead of my pain.
Ask your doctor if Vioxx is right for you. Vioxx for everyday victories.
Developing news tonight on a major pharmaceutical settlement. This afternoon, the drug maker Merck agreed to pay a $950 million fine to settle claims that it marketed Vioxx as a treatment for rheumatoid arthritis before receiving FDA approval to do so. The company will also plead guilty to misdemeanor charges. Vioxx was pulled off the market in 2004. Evidence showed that it increased the risk of heart attacks and strokes.
Johnson & Johnson is now pulling its baby powder containing talc powder worldwide, I should say. The product has already been pulled in the United States and Canada after thousands of lawsuits claimed it caused cancer. The company says the talc worldwide will now be replaced with cornstarch.
Once you've found the right doctor and have told him or her about your pain, don't be afraid to take what they give you. Often, it will be an opioid medication. Some patients may be afraid of taking opioids because they're perceived as too strong or addictive. But that is far from actual fact. Less than 1% of patients taking opioids actually become addicted. And any drowsiness that might occur when you start to take the medication will soon wear off in most patients.
The OxyContin maker, Purdue Pharma, reaches a new deal with several states to settle lawsuits for its alleged role in the opioid crisis. The settlement requires the Sackler family, the owners of the company, to pay as much as $6 billion in cash. That is $1.5 billion more than a previous deal. They will also give up control of the Stamford, Connecticut-based company and apologize. In exchange, the family would be protected from civil lawsuits. A judge, though, still needs to approve the deal.
Within a few months of starting psychiatry, I was realising there was something seriously wrong with it. It was immediately obvious to me that the psychiatrists were making claims that they couldn't have made, that they were making claims which simply were not justified in biology. But if you stand up and say that what you're doing, ladies and gentlemen, is not science, it's pseudoscience, then you are challenging what's holding the whole profession together. What's happening in psychiatry is that there is a general agreement there will be no criticism of the status quo. There will be no criticism. I think secretly they know deep inside that if anybody criticises this or examines this too closely, it might fall apart. This is all held up. The skyhook that holds this palaver, this mess of jargon in place, is the single injunction: mental disorder is brain disorder. That is the single intellectual hook that holds this edifice in the air, that stops it all collapsing in a heap. They just make this claim: mental disease is brain disease. But that, as I've said, is an ideological claim. People are being told, you have a chemical imbalance of the brain which is genetically determined and you've got it for life and there's nothing you can do about it and you will forever be limited and restricted and you must take these tablets which will dampen your creativity, your sensitivity, your awareness, they will damage your sexuality. You've got to do this because you're sick and we can see it, but you can't. Now that is that to me is the catastrophe that has to be exposed. The general public needs to know where their hundreds of millions of dollars of research money is going and where their billions upon billions of dollars of treatment money is going, and above all, where their sons and daughters and mothers and fathers are going. And that's where it's at. Bugger the money. Excuse me, but bugger the money. It's the lie.
Evening, Christian.
Good evening. You're right. Good evening.
Yes, and you?
Yeah.
Evening, everybody.
Are we online?
Can you all hear us okay?
Oh, yeah.
I'm going to bring Jerry and Mark in now. Hi there, guys. Hi, Jerry. Hi, Mark.
Hi, guys. You're right.
Hi, guys. Hi, Jerry. Pleased
Good
to
see
meet
you
you.
again,
Can everybody hear everybody okay?
Yeah, I can.
Let's hear you, Jerry. I can't hear you. You're on mute, buddy. You're muted, Jerry. Let me tell Jerry he's muted. Muted, Jerry.
Okay, how's that?
That's better.
Yay.
We're on.
Yeah,
We're
yeah.
in business. Yeah.
Okay.
I'll do a brief intro. Welcome to Sheep Farm Live, raw. Thanks to my mate Jimmy Who for that initial video of his drone footage. He's more or less professional, I would call him, but his drone's amazing. Remember, you can catch our podcasts at sheepfarm.co.uk. They're also on Podomatic, and we're also on Rumble. I'm trying to do a live one on Rumble instead and get away from this parasite platform that we're on at the moment, YouTube. You can email us at info@sheepfarm.co.uk, where our lovely sheep farm assistant, Christian, mustached PA, he's PA Baracus from the A-team. He'll get back to you with any emails you want. If you've got any questions, I've asked you already. We asked you on the shows, and I've put a message out there for Jerry and Mark. We'll try and gather them all up. You keep your eye on them, Chris, and we'll get to a point in the show where we'll just ask for a few, answer a few questions.
Yeah, I'll
Is that all right with you?
I'll write any
Is
questions.
that all right with you, Jerry and Mark? So tonight we're going to talk about voices, and this really resonated with me tonight. A few years ago, and when I mentioned it to Chris, I was talking to Jerry earlier on, and I was telling him about my journey with Lyme disease and the intrusive voices that I had, hence why it resonated. And I'd been studying a little bit of psychology, but I understood that these attachments weren't usual. That was my experience in the 2000s, and I had to do a lot of work holistically and alternate health, as everybody knows, we've got a clinic, etc., to get rid of these. I call them intrusive voices, background noise, whatever we want to call it, from taking over. I had to do a lot of work personally on that. And Jerry's story, when I heard it one night, late one night, I rung Christian up, and it didn't scare me. It just sent a shiver up my spine. And I know Mark's got a lot of these experiences as well. And it resonated with me because it was exactly what I'd gone through. Exactly. And I'm sure a lot of people in the chat have experienced things like this as well. And these negative entities, as we're seeing outside in Parliament, etc., are controlling us or attempting to control us. And Jerry's story, as I say, is compelling. So we've got Jerry Marzinsky, who's going to do a brief intro now into his background and where we can contact him. That's firstly, because Christian says I'm crap at that. So where can anybody contact you, Jerry, if they want to get hold of you?
They can go through my website at jerrymarzinsky.com. I do have a private practice. They can also email me directly at, I don't know if I might be overwhelmed at jmarzinsky@outlook.com.
Say that again, sorry, Jerry.
So I'll get back to you if I can. And
yeah.
I'm having a little bit of trouble with the sound. Every once in a while, I miss a word or two you're saying.
Yeah. Every now and again. But it's manageable. Your signal's strong, so every now and again. If anything, Jerry, we'll go down to just audio and turn off the video, and that tends to soup up the audio as well. So let's get some background of your work early on in your career, where you came from, and I suppose we'll just sit back and listen.
Oh, well. After graduate school, I got hired on at one of the psychiatric hospitals in Millville, Georgia, Central State Hospital. And it was there where the brainwashing I'd gotten in college and graduate school started falling apart. It didn't add up. What I was taught didn't add up to what I was seeing and experiencing. So one of the first time,
I tell you what, Jerry, you might need to. Jerry, you might need to log out and come back in if you would, because it is cutting out quite badly. If you want to log out and come back in. Come back in, yeah. I'll chip you out. Just come back in and I'll let you back in, yeah?
Okay, so.
Sorry, Jerry, but it were a bit hard to listen to that. So have you listened to some of Jerry's stories, Mark?
No, I've not.
That's
heard
good.
I've
That's
not
even
heard
better.
Yeah, I'm excited tonight. I'm excited to listen to what he's got to say.
He was saying a lot of his interviews get attacked by, obviously, entities from telling his story. And we've just seen that firsthand.
Yeah. The first question would be, what do you mean he got attacked? Or
the streams, his connectivity seems to get attacked. Here we go.
Or it could just have shite internet fire.
Well, he's full bars. Hi, Jerry.
I'm joking.
Maybe he has. Oh, I hope it's not going to be poor.
Well,
this is what's happening to him. Every time he does a stream, he says it goes down.
I think this is really interesting, right? Because it's such an important conversation right now that we all need to know about because of what's happening right now.
Yes.
So it makes sense that there is interference, and this happens to me a lot when some subject like this comes up. So it's interesting, eh?
Yeah, I don't know what he's doing. It was fine first time round. Yeah, it is, and just bear with us, guys, in the chat, if you would, please. Just let's get Jerry back in. We'll have to keep booting him. He's gonna have to keep logging in. Sad that, because I want to get him on a proper a roll, because when he tells these stories, they still freak me out even today. How you been today anyway, Mark? What's been happening?
Busy.
Yeah.
I got a lot of attacks today from David Icke's followers.
All right, really?
All right,
Yeah, a lot. Well, because I did an hour and a half talk on the trap, basically, and it tried to explain to people exactly what I believed it was through my experience. And obviously, experience means nothing now. They'd rather read somebody's book and believe that than somebody's experience. And this is the way the world's gone now, and it baffles me.
Yeah.
I don't believe you, I believe a book. That's somebody wrote.
Yeah, especially coming from David Icke's followers.
Because exactly. Doesn't make any sense, mate. Doesn't make any sense to me at all. But hey-ho, we're starting to understand it now. Followers, no followers, and that's one of the reasons why I tell people, don't follow me. Don't start to become like, wolf mentality, wolf pack mentality. Be individual. I share this. Be individual. Do your research. Don't believe anything anybody says. But it seems that people just want to buy into one person and then defend them no matter what. And it's phenomenal. It's phenomenal how people can defend something. And one of the things I said, like if I want my car fixed and my mechanic says to me downstairs, yeah, I'll fix it for you. And I said, no, there's a guy across the road who writes about being a mechanic and how to fix vehicles. I'm going to go to him instead because I believe him more than I believe you. This is how it feels. Mental. And it's like, what planet am I on?
Well, we're in clown world at the moment, aren't we? In fact, it's worse than that, isn't it? It's worse than that. Can you hear us there, Jerry? I don't know what's happened, Jerry. You might need to reboot your computer, buddy, and come back on if you can hear me. We can't hear you, and there's no video.
Yeah, the life of Brian. I've just seen somebody comment. It's isn't it incredible when you look at it, how they came out with all of this, years ago, and now they saw it coming, right? They just knew it. People just want to follow. So many people just want to follow, and that's it.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, let Jerry reboot his computer. Sometimes, I mean, me and Chris have had that. But sometimes you just need to reboot and start again, don't you? Yeah. But you're right, Mark. There's a lot of interference. There's a lot of attachments. There's a lot of attacks for people who I listened to Mark Devlin the other day. People who are doing things like we're doing, revealing things, and people in the chat who are trying to help people out there in the world as well. There's a lot of attacks. People, we noticed that going back over the last two. Although I don't want to mention the last 2 or 3 years, but yeah, even the last 2 or 3 years, we noticed these attacks, and they were pretty constant, weren't they? And not just from the government as well.
It's everywhere. It's coming at us from every single, everywhere, just about. It really is. I can see why people are retreating, why people are pulling back. A lot of people are just saying, you know what, it can be. I understand why a lot of people switch comments off. I understand now why a lot of people don't look at the comments, but I like to participate. I like to debate. I like to discuss things. You can't shut people up from debate by saying what you're saying is bullshit. Like, you know,
people can't have a grown-up conversation. That's the problem.
This is the problem. You're right. Yeah.
You just take the information. If you don't like it, just go with it. You know, I mean, you don't have to follow anything, do you? Just yeah, it's funny. I don't understand it, to be honest with you.
I love David's work. I love a lot of the things he helped me with. But just because I disagree with one thing, that doesn't mean I want everybody to hate him. It's just that, hey, I don't believe that because this is my experience. And like, yeah, that's great. I never thought about that. But it's not that kind of, it's an attack. It's like, what, you're disagreeing with the Messiah of conspiracy. I'm not disagreeing with him. I'm just saying that there's another point of view and let me share that point of view. No, shut up. I mean, we're talking about the conspiracy crowd. They're as bad at shutting people up as those that are not in conspiracy, who talk about those who are conspiracy.
Yeah, you're right. You're right, Mark. They are.
It's really sad.
And also, as good as David Icke has been over the years, he ain't always right. None of us can always be right.
No.
We're coming up with ideas, aren't we, and paths that we're not necessarily saying that ours is the right path or ours is the right idea. And nobody can say that. And it's quite sad when people do.
We've had it a couple of times.
Scholars, right?
Yeah.
We've had it a couple of times, haven't we, done, where, I liked you guys, but you said this, so,
Yes, it's just one thing you said, and that's it. Gone.
Yeah, that 14 hours that you talked.
Yeah.
Just one 30-second clip that I'm off. I'm out of here.
Yeah.
And also, you might change your mind at some point. Everyone can change their mind. That's what you should be about.
Totally.
Hi, Jerry, can you hear us now?
Yep, I can. Can you hear me?
That sounds miles better, buddy.
Yeah.
I'll tell you, every time I talk about this stuff, there's some kind of interference.
Right.
It's now it's the norm. I just expect it.
It doesn't surprise us because we were just saying while you were having a reboot there that the amount of attacks from silly places, it can even be friends, people you've known for years. They come up and just give you, here, just carry this anvil round for a week.
Brothers,
I'm going to give you. Brothers. Yeah, even brothers. Yeah, I'm going to unload all my crap on you. You cart this round. And where's all that come from? That comes from another attachment that's getting to us through them. It's it could send you a little bit paranoid if you really wanted to look at it like that. But if you're in observer mode and you look at it in reality, you can actually see it for what it is, can't you? And interesting. It's very interesting. Right, Jerry. Let's start again. So you got to a point where you said you'd seen through the veil of the lies after your training.
Okay, I'm still getting, every once in a while it says my headphone stops.
No, you're fine, mate. You're fine.
Okay.
100%.
I can't hear you though. Every once in a while I miss a word or two.
Okay.
If it gets too bad, I'll switch over to the thing.
Yeah. Now you're going mute again.
Device unexpectedly stopped.
Right.
Never before.
Does Jerry's computer have a built-in microphone, perhaps?
Does your laptop have a built-in microphone, Jerry?
Well, it does if I turn the computer on. The speakers on.
Yeah, I don't think it's a mic; it's your connectivity for some reason. Yeah.
I don't know. I can unplug the headphone and see if you still hear me.
Yeah, do it.
Okay.
Try it.
All right, how's that?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Can you hear anything?
Yeah,
you're fine.
Did you guys hear anything?
Yeah, we can hear you.
You could hear me?
Yeah. Yeah, we could hear you fine. Yeah.
Okay, maybe I ought to just get off this headphone.
We'll try it.
Give it a go, eh?
Amish Inquisition.
Let's go. Let's go.
Let me turn
So
on the.
can you get two cups and a piece of string?
Let me see if I can hear you.
Let's go with that, Jerry. Let's see how we get on, mate.
Okay, let's do that, because that was strange. That was strange.
Yeah. Let's draw a clean slate and start again. Then go on.
Okay, so after graduate school, I went and I got a job at the biggest psychiatric hospital on the planet. Basically, at the time, there were close to 10,000 patients there when I first started. It was massive. It was the size of a small city. So every mental illness known to man was in there somewhere. And I was both an adrenaline junkie and interested in abnormal psychology. So for me, it was like a kid in a candy store. It's like, look at all these people that something's gone wrong in their brain. And the thing is, what was it? Because none of the books that I studied, they did a great job of defining what these illnesses were and the traits and facets of them, but they had hardly anything on what to do about it except take these toxic drugs that the psychiatrists were bringing into that hospital by the dump truck load. So, what I'd been taught was that hallucinations were, when you think of hallucination, because they just referred to them as hallucinations, in college and graduate school. Oh, yeah, these are hallucinations. You think of hallucinations, you think, it's crazy stuff. Doesn't make any sense, unconnected, just random crazy stuff, But when I got to the state hospital, I started seeing people who were supposedly having hallucinations, but they were carrying on coherent conversations with somebody I couldn't see. So it's like if you're listening to somebody talk on a telephone and you can't hear what's coming in, but you can hear them talking, the conversation appeared to be coherent. They were talking coherently to something or somebody that I couldn't see. Now, everybody else in the hospital, oh yeah, they're just hallucinating, they're talking to themselves. There was one fella, when I first saw that, I was doing rounds, and he was a new fella that appeared on the psych ward. So I saw him carrying on a conversation with somebody, so I tried to kind of creep up behind him and listen to what he was saying, because this isn't what I was expecting. I was expecting just random word salad, not making any sense. And here he was carrying on a coherent conversation while he's walking around the day room of the psych ward. So he actually caught me. I turned around, I introduced myself. I'm the psych for this unit. I haven't seen you before, or you new. What's your name? And he looked at me and he goes, I'm Jesus Christ. And I look at him, and what I was told in graduate school prior to that, I have to put that in. We were in undergrad, we were told to read a paper written by a psychologist, clinical psychologist, who said that if two crazy people met each other and they had the same delusion, both of them thought they were George Washington, one of them would have to give way and pick another delusion. And even in undergraduate school, I'm going, why would that have to happen? I mean, why would one crazy guy have to switch his delusion because another crazy guy had it? It just didn't make any sense to me. So I'd logged it into the back of my memory, and this was years before I got to the situation I'm telling you about. So I remembered it, and I just logged it in there, because what I hated about psychology is you couldn't verify virtually anything they said, except if you went to abnormal psychology and went to a rat lab. Then you could see what they were saying. Otherwise, you were expected to believe all this stuff that they're saying, these books and books and books, and you had no way to verify it as a student for yourself. You had no access to a clinical population. If you went into a mental hospital and you said, hey, listen, I want to study schizophrenics, they'd never let you in there. If you went into a prison and you said, hey, I just want to talk to some of your schizophrenic inmates to see what's going on, they wouldn't let you in there. So you're blocked. You're blocked. Students do not have access to clinical populations. They will not let you in there. They'll make up all kinds of excuses. Oh, we can't take the risk. You're in danger. You never can predict what these people are. I mean, it'll be just a plethora of anything. And if you do get in, you're going to be monitored with somebody from the establishment by your side to make sure what you're doing. Okay. So the only real way to get in there to have access to a clinical population was actually to jump through all their hoops. Go to undergraduate school, go to graduate school, and then they let you in. Okay, but they let you in brainwashed. There's no way to verify any of the stuff that they taught you. So here I am with my head full of all this garbage they taught me, and I start seeing contradictions that made no sense. So the first one was, you'd think a hallucination was word salad. So they have auditory and visual hallucinations. So I thought the auditory hallucinations were just, rambling that made no sense, incoherent ramblings. And the hallucinations I thought would also be kind of random. I mean, be this one and then that one and then but they didn't give any real stories like some of the stories I tell. They just weren't there. It was all kind of clinically oriented, like they knew everything that was going on. So, I was told that if two crazy people with the same delusion met, one of them would have to give way. So here comes this guy who tells me I'm Jesus Christ. So I right away my mind flashes back to that incident. It was probably 6, 7, probably 8 years, 10 years previous, where I was told this thing. That pops up, and I look at this guy. I look him right in the eye and I say, no, you can't be Jesus Christ because I am. And I'm sitting there kind of going, hoping nobody heard me. It was in the middle of the day room floor. When you start playing around investigating contradictions, they don't much like that. So you got to be a little careful. So this guy looks at me. He's a little bit confused. He looks around. He looks at me again. And then he thinks, and you can see cock his eyes back. And then he looks at me and he goes, okay, we can both be Jesus Christ. And he strums off, and I'm standing there looking at like watching him run off. And here's my mind going, what else did they lie to me about? What other lies did they tell me that I couldn't verify for myself? Now I was in there. Now I could see for myself what's going on. There wasn't anybody watching over me. There wasn't anybody going, hey, you got to play by the book. So the next one was, this chemical imbalance crap. So I watched how that progressed. I mean, I read the literature. It started off, they started blaming mothers for schizophrenia. Oh, the mothers did something bad. But that could be verified in general by the public. It could be verified by, psychologists, psychiatrists, counselors. It didn't play out. Then the mothers weren't having it either. So they switched the story to something that the public and the people on the front lines could not verify. They said, oh, now it's a genetic disorder. It's a genetic, So who can investigate that except these guys in the genetics lab? I mean, they've moved it totally out of the province of the society and the public who could see for themselves what was going on into this esoteric group of geneticists that, who understands that stuff, So they printed that for a long time. Oh yeah, it's a genetic disorder. There's a schizophrenia germ. Problem is they couldn't find one. All these other more honest geneticists would say, we don't find it. We don't find anything. So after a while, that one blew up. So they're looking for a physical cause, something wrong with the brain, so they can keep feeding people these toxic medications of theirs. Oh, it's got to be a physical disorder. It's got to be a physical disorder. So when the genetic thing fell apart, then they moved to the chemical imbalance theory. This was made up by a drug company in the 70s when they came out with Prozac. They just made it up. They needed a physical cause for mental illness, and they didn't have one. So they made it up. Oh, it's a chemical imbalance now. Who's going to measure that? You're going to need labs. You're going to need chemists. You're going to need biochemists. I mean, it's totally, again, out of the province of the public to verify. It's out of the province of psychologists and psychiatry to verify, and again moved away into this specialized group that, there has to be somebody looking into this. And they got away with that for years. For years, oh, it's a chemical imbalance. It's believed that it is serotonin. It's believed that, studies suggest. And these studies are ridiculous. When you look at them, they're totally freaking ridiculous. It looks like the drug companies paid them to come up with those results. Then what happened was, and at the time I was in there, it was the chemical imbalance stuff that they were putting off, and I believed it. I didn't have, and I would ask the psychiatrist, I said, what causes this? What causes the voices? What makes these people go off like that? Oh, it's a chemical imbalance. They all believed it. Some of the honest ones would say, well, we don't know, but they were far and few between. But for the most part, I would say 85-90% of the staff believed it was a chemical imbalance because that's what they were taught. That's what the drug companies had taken over the medical establishment back in the 1930s with the Flexner Report. Rockefeller and all these high-powered guys made it illegal to teach anything except pharmacological medicine. Right? Anybody who taught anything else would not be allowed to graduate doctors. It's that point where they seized control of the medical establishment.
And they were funding all the universities to give the diplomas and the qualifications out. So
that's exactly right. If they didn't do what these guys, these multimillionaires said, that they were deep state who had taken over they weren't allowed to graduate medical students. Right. So they took over the colleges and the universities at that time. So here they are teaching this chemical imbalance. And when I got to this big hospital, virtually everybody believed that all these mental illnesses were caused by some kind of chemical imbalance theory. But what I saw was that if there's a chemical imbalance, what you need is, and they would kind of imply that their medication somehow balanced whatever was out of balance. But if you have a chemical imbalance of some kind, what they do is they give lab work to see what's out of balance and by how much. You need a baseline. They didn't have any freaking baseline. I never saw a psychiatrist ever give any request for a lab before dishing out these medicines. I didn't see them.
Every case would be different as well. Every case would be different. You'd need different rebalancing drugs to get it rebalanced, wouldn't it? Every single person.
That was a crock of crap. That's what it was. There is no balance. The only reason those drugs work is because they are major tranquilizers. They calm the person down. They suppress psychiatric symptoms. They don't cure anything. Matter of fact, they make things worse. They with long-term use, they actually rot out the person's brain. They rot out their peripheral nervous system. So here I'm watching these psychiatrists never order any kind of lab test or any other kind of test to see what is out of balance or by how much, ever. So I asked them one day, so what's the deal? If it's something out of balance, how come you don't give some kind of lab test to find out what's out of balance or by how much? You need some kind of baseline, and I'd never see you guys give it before you just prescribe the medicines. What's going on? Oh, the drug companies take care of that. And I'm like, what? How do they do that? Oh, by the research they've done, they see that these certain chemicals balance. Yeah. So they were under the spell of the psychiatric mafia also. They weren't aware. So it turns out that some of these more honest biochemists found that there was no chemical imbalance. They couldn't find one. Right? So here's big pharma and the psychiatric mafia again on the hot seat. There is no balance. So what are we going to do now? And then they found that these long-term psychiatric patients, and I've seen them, they called it the Thorazine shuffle, where long-term use of these neuroleptic drugs actually rots out their brains, rots out their peripheral nervous system, And what they did when those side effects, that damage and the side effects appeared, they would give another drug like Cogentin to cover that up. So the patient doesn't experience it, but the destructive process continues onward. But the patient who's suffering these symptoms doesn't experience it because it's masked by this secondary drug that they gave.
If you remember, serves me right, Jerry, I remember you telling a story about you going to an electroconvulsive therapy test early on in your training as well.
Yeah, I almost fainted after that one. You know,
it's horrendous.
So what happened is when these more honest biochemists came out and said, you know, no, there is no chemical imbalance, and then they started doing autopsies on long-term mental patients who've been on these psychiatric drugs, these antipsychotic drugs, for a long time. And they were seeing that there was a consistent finding that their brains were shrunk. Yeah, that's our book.
Yeah, sorry, I was going to just plug it up there, Jerry. That's Jerry's book.
Yeah,
Brilliant.
thank you.
Yeah,
yeah, you can. That tells a story of how we got to the point of where I'm talking about now.
Yeah, just reminded me. I just read that. Yeah.
Yeah, anybody who's dealing with this population or has a schizophrenic family member ought to read that. It'll at least tell you what's actually happening and not the bullcrap that you're being fed by the psychiatric mafia.
Yeah, yeah.
So what they found in these autopsies, that these people's brains were shrunk like walnuts, and they were finding it time after time after time. So some of these more honest people would publish these findings, and when it hit the psychiatric mafia and big pharma, they went nuts. Oh no, it's not these drugs. It's not our drugs. It's the schizophrenia. It's doing that. You know, it's this mysterious finding. So what the honest ones did was they started feeding it to rats and mice and monkeys, and they found that with extended use, their brains were also rotting out.
Basically, lobotomizing these people.
Well, it's a kind of the drugs themselves are like a chemical straitjacket. Right. You know, that's what they are. They're a chemical straitjacket, these neuroleptic drugs. But it was the entire brain that was being damaged. Not a lobotomy just damages the front part of the brain, and it turns a person into a zombie. I met one once at the hospital, and I remember my reaction after talking to him. I walked off and I went, he's just not quite human. You know? So they were using that. They had a lobotomy mobile here in the United States where this psychiatrist drove around. I think this was like in the 1930s or something like that, 1940s. This guy drove all around the country, and he was doing lobotomies, scrambling the prefrontal cortex of these psych patients, turning them into zombies. Something that they would never recover from.
Yeah. It's, so, have you got anything you want to ask, Mark, while we have a pause there?
No, this to me is like very interesting. I'm looking forward for when he moves on to explaining about the voices and what he perceives as the voices. That's where I'm really interested in. But all that what you've just explained was absolutely necessary, because I've encountered this with meds and also understood what the voices were from meds to non-meds and still voices. So I'm really interested in all of what he's saying, and this beginning is necessary, but I'm looking forward to listening to
the money shot,
the connection then, and how he connected to spirit and how he realized that who are these entities and what they are and how they came through. So but this is fascinating. But I think most of us already knew this as well. Deep down, I think most of us already knew that anybody who gets shipped into one of those places, it's a death sentence. It's a death sentence, I think, to most of them, and they've got it covered, right? They've got the whole of the medical mafia covered. Everything's covered.
You can't get in. You can't question them. You know, they are the experts. It reminds me of the old Egyptian priests. You know, back in Egyptian days. Yeah. You know, these are like the psychiatric priests.
Right.
You know, same thing. They don't tolerate being questioned. And that was really evident when I was in the PhD program. Boy, you know, I already had 7 years in this large state hospital, and I was asking them a lot of questions that they couldn't answer, and they didn't like it. You know, they didn't like it.
When you think about it, Jerry, they are the priest class because they own the universities, they own someone getting a diploma, they set up the training, and that's not dissimilar from going to a church and becoming a priest or a monk or whatever. They own what you say. They sign you into contracts. All these things are the same setup as it would be if you joined a monastery in the Dark Ages, probably, or in the Middle Ages. It's very similar. You're right. Yeah, it's very similar.
It's definitely a cult. You know, if you don't fit into it, they will throw you out.
Yeah, or throw you under a bus.
But you did well, Jerry. You navigated through all of that, and you were 1 in a million, and you saw this. Did you ever meet anybody, Jerry, that was like-minded along that journey?
No, because they're all deceived by the psychiatric mafia. Now I have now that I'm putting out videos, I'm getting stuff from spiritual healers and hypnotherapists and that kind of stuff, asking questions, but not back then. See, that they were all deceived into believing that these voices were hallucinations. So when I got to the psychiatric hospital, a big thing, they were all convinced of that. You know, and I was watching. You know, I had a caseload of all kinds of psychiatric patients, and I was watching that these voices would affect their behavior. It was pretty clear to me that they would affect their behavior. They would sabotage these people. So I was working for the Department of Vocational Rehabilitation at the time in a psychiatric rehab center called the Yarborough Building. And what we did we were trying to get these people stabilized on meds, which is the only thing they knew to do at the time, train them in a basic skill like hairdressing or janitorial work or auto mechanics or, hair cutting, a basic skill where they could go out and they could be productive. What I was seeing is as they approached, and the bottom line was, did they get out of the hospital and were they able to hold a job for, I think it was 6 months? You know, if they could hold a job for 6 months, that was considered a success. Right? But what I saw with the voices is that they would show up when the person was about ready to graduate, and they would get that person to do something stupid, go off their meds, spit the meds out, get in a fight with somebody, and actually sabotage them from graduating. Or if they went off their meds 3 times, there was kind of like an unwritten rule. You go off 3 times, you're not going to be able to survive on the outside, because the only thing we know is you have to stay on those meds to keep your sanity. Right? So if they went off 3 times, we would kind of discharge them.
We all see people do that on a lesser scale in life, don't we, where they sabotage your own existence. And you just think, why are you doing that to yourself?
It's the voices that do that.
Yeah.
Matter of fact, I found out later that the side effects that from these toxic drugs, I mean, and they are toxic, they are poisonous drugs, they're some of the most dangerous drugs used in medicine today. The side effects are awful. You know, blurred vision, dried mouth, sexual dysfunction, you feel like a zombie, your system is full of syrup, you get all these neurological twists, and it's awful. They're awful medications. So that is a reaction to these drugs. So it is a toxic reaction to these drugs that they're feeding these people. The voices come along behind that, and they go, see, the psychiatrist is poisoning you. He's poisoning you. You got to do something about it. Don't take those meds. And one thing I noticed when I was at that state hospital was that psychiatrists were getting beat up at a rate far in excess of any other staff member for the little bit of time that they were spending with these people. So they'd spend 20 minutes maybe every 2-3 weeks with these people. And they were it was like assault after assault after assault. Somewhere on the hospital, one of them was getting punched out. And that made no sense to me, because, you know, the psych nurses weren't getting hurt, psychologists weren't getting hurt, counselors weren't getting hurt, psych nurses weren't getting hurt. It was the psychiatrists, the ones who were ordering those medications, the ones that the voices were telling these patients were poisoning them. Then it made sense, but it took me years to figure that out. 7 to be precise, you know. So, that was going on. And then everybody at the hospital believed that the voices were hallucinations. But what was strange was none of them were curious about what these voices were telling the patients. And I'm like, well, if they're voices and they're coherent, what are they telling these people? Nobody was curious about it. They were hallucinations. They were nonsensical hallucinations. Who would look into a hallucination? So they got that covered too. Who's going to investigate a hallucination? Any professional who does that, they're going to think is a wacko. So I started looking into it, and I started asking these patients, what are they telling you? What are you hearing? What are they saying? What are they doing? When psychiatry found out about that, I was called up on the red carpet in front of the head psychiatrist, and I was told the voices are hallucinations. That's what they are. By asking these people questions, you are reinforcing the hallucination, and you're making them worse. And I was ordered to stop twice by 2 different psychiatrists. They don't want you even looking into it. They don't want to even think about it. And I think at some level, they're kind of afraid of these people.
I was just going to say, they're afraid of the other side, aren't they? They're afraid of if it is true. It's a bit like, again, when you're questioning the narrative, everyone's scared of the truth that comes back to you. And they know if they start asking those questions where it leads.
Yeah, so I started talking to them. What are these things telling you? And one by one, these patterns started appearing. The first of which was they were always negative. They were always abusive. They were insulting. They were destructive. They never said anything good. And that was with all of them. There wasn't anything good that they said. It was all with, you're ugly, you're stupid, you're crazy, people are just faking like they love you. Your boyfriend is cheating on you. Your girlfriend is cheating on you. Every lie under the sun. Mm-hmm. And that was consistent from patient to patient to patient to patient to patient. And now I found that it's not only consistent from patient to patient. The voices with the patients I was working with here in Arizona, when I was working in the prison system, had the same patterns that the patients in the psych hospital did in Georgia. Same exact patterns. And now working with people in my private practice all around the world, it's the same patterns. Over and over and over again. Now, if these
just a coincidence, Jerry.
No, not a coincidence. Now, if these things are running patterns, they cannot be hallucinations like the psychiatric mafia says they are, or insists they are. Nothing hallucinations are random. They're all over the place. They're positive, negative, neutral. They're all over the place. No. The first pattern I saw is they're consistently negative, abusive, destructive, insulting, derogatory. And it's still the same. They're anti-religious. They want nothing to do with the Bible, the church. I've had patients tell me, several of them tell me, when I repeat the 23rd Psalm, the voices react like worms thrown onto a hot frying pan.
Wow.
What would hold a hallucination on a consistently negative path and prevent it from going random, where some are positive, some are negative, some are neutral? Something is holding these things on a consistently negative path. Why would a hallucination care anything about religion? Why would a hallucination be anti-religious? Another thing that happened is after these voices would attack these patients, they would feel energetically drained. Some of them told me they felt so drained it was as if they were working in the hot sun all day with a pickaxe and digging ditches all day. That's how drained they were. And all they were doing was being attacked by the voices at night, rolling around in their bed, not able to sleep. Right? So these things are energetic parasites. There's a one-to-one correlation between their appearing and their energy being sucked out of them. And that's no mistake. These things are feeding off the energy of these people, but they have to turn their emotional state negative first. They can't get their energy unless they're in an emotional negative state at a low vibration. So that explains why they are battering these guys and they're derogatory, insulting, abusive, and destructive. They have to turn that emotional state negative before they can take the person's energy.
Say that again, Jerry. Just one more time. Can you say that last bit again?
They have to turn the victim's emotional state negative before they can drain their energy.
Well, that bit I haven't seen. Everything thus far you've said is absolutely 100%. However, I can speak for myself, having been attacked by this, and I wrote about it in my book. And at the time this happened, I was a full-time healer, and I wasn't feeling bad or down or anything like that. And through the day, I could feel something coming inside me, and something, and you're right, 100%, it's always negative. It's never love or kindness or anything. It's always negative and nasty. I experienced this myself, so I know it's happened to me twice. But I asked myself, why? Was I low? Was I feeling bad? Did I have a fight with my partner? I was actually okay. So that's the only thing thus far that I have a different opinion on, because like I had an awful entity attachment. It took a while for people to help me get rid of it. But you're saying what you're saying is thus far is correct. I just wanted to share that with you to say that it happened to me, and I was really strong at the time. So that's interesting, eh?
Well, maybe that's why. But I felt it when I started working with the prisoners who were, the criminally insane in the state hospital. What I found is that if I worked with 2 of them a day, that I came home completely drained. I couldn't do anything. I couldn't get anything done at home. So, I would limit the number of them that I worked with to either 1 or 2 a day, because if I worked with more than 2, I was energetically drained.
And why weren't the nurses and other people working in that hospital, why weren't they ever feeling drained?
Because they're not messing with the voices.
Okay, so it's only because you were interacting and because of the interaction, you are now receiving the same as what your patient is receiving. Is that correct?
Yep, and it took me years to figure that out. Matter of fact, the hypnotherapist I was talking to before I came on with you guys, she was talking about how drained she feels after working with these same kind of people. So it's very common.
I learned, Jerry, how to detach from that energy through experience, and I learned how to not allow that energy into me by choosing not to talk to it. I chose not to do anything other than try and clear it, and that was my escape. That's how I was able to do this work, because if I was to interact and try and talk or try and understand it, I would be also attacked and drained and felt dreadful for a week or 2 weeks. So it's interesting. This is all interesting to me. I love what you're saying. I'm loving it.
Look, I did talk to him in the prison, and we were able to walk some of them into the light. And who was it? I forgot the name of the guy. He wrote Spiritual Releasement Therapy. He talked to him all the time. As a matter of fact, a client last week, I talked one of them into the light, and that one never came back. But I didn't feel drained after that, But I do have to ask for protection, and watch out. But yeah, that's a pretty consistent finding. Most of these patients, after the voices attack, virtually all of them, they're energetically drained. And that's I don't know what happened with you, but that's not the norm.
But probably coming at it from a slightly different angle to what you're doing. I mean, you're treating people who are sort of out in the free world, Mark, and he's treating people who are locked in a prison per se, that are under massive stress and different types of stress and strains. Maybe I don't know.
Right now, like the one I worked with 2 weeks ago, we walked one of the voices in by talking to it, walked it into the light. That voice never came back, but she still had others.
Yeah.
So
what's your take, Jerry, on walking them into the light? Do you believe that the light is a trap and brings them straight back here into another incarnation? Or do you believe walking into the light is taking them back into our God, energy, spirit, world, whatever you want to call it?
Yeah, what they're told by their superiors is that they have no light in them. Okay. What I found interesting is, I mean, God is in control of all this stuff. He created these things also. Okay. So what I found was that they have a very dim light in them. It's like a coal. It's like a dim orange coal. Okay. So if you in talking to them, you go, so there's 3 rules that they're not allowed to break. One is they're not supposed to be discovered. Okay. You're supposed to think they're hallucinations. They're not supposed to be discovered as what they are. Okay. If they are, that's a rule that's broken. All right. So if I understand that these are entities and I know they're entities, they've been discovered. That's one. Number 2, the patient isn't supposed to talk to anybody about them. Okay, they're not supposed to tell anybody that they exist, and they will tell the patient. You tell anybody that we're here, they're going to lock you up. You know, you're going to consider to be crazy. Your friends are going to disappear, and all those things happen. You know, so that flies in their face. If they talk to me about the voices, which I understand, they're breaking the rules. The voices are breaking the rules, especially if they talk to me.
Could I ask you what rules and where are those rules set?
I guess they're set by their leaders. I mean, there's a hierarchy of them. The lower ones run these patterns that I'm telling you about. It's almost like they're all made from the same cookie cutter and programmed the same way. You know, they're all told, don't get discovered, don't talk to anybody except your victim. You know, and what was there was a third one. They failed to destroy the victim because they're assigned to destroy the victim. So that's 3 failures on their part.
Sorry, is that death? You mean kill them?
No. Well, however, you know, get them into a mental hospital, kill them. I mean, the suicide rate for schizophrenics is 3 to 5 times higher than the general population.
What's the reason for that, Jerry, please?
What's the reason for what?
For doing what they're doing.
That's $1 million question.
No, I've got my own intake on this. I'm just really interested to why are they wanting to do it? What do they get from doing all of this to their...
What they're told is that they have no light in them. And that if they fail to do what they're assigned to do, they will be sent to somewhere called the pit, which I'm not quite sure what that is, but they're all terrified of it.
That might be what lead.
So they're told that they have no light. If they don't follow what they're ordered to do, they will simply cease to exist.
That might be what Lee, a friend of ours, talks about what Steiner used to call, I think it was the 7th sphere or the 8th sphere, where it's basically where all the sludge and the residue from the energies from Earth, if you like, end up. That might be where they're terrorised if they don't behave themselves. But I think you meant there, Mark, when he said destroy, that last question there, why are they doing this? You meant why the entity's doing this to the people.
Exactly.
Not why are the people trying to kill themselves.
No, not at all. I just want, I mean, you could come up with an answer, say, because they feed from their energy or whatever reason. I'm just interested in one. Is it one or is it many factors, or have you seen a pattern?
It's both those. All right. They do take the energy, and secondly, they're ordered to, and they're punished if they're not.
Yeah.
There's a hierarchy of them. So there's like sergeants and lieutenants, and it just goes on up.
Jerry, can they come and go?
For the most part, they don't. Sometimes they do. Usually it's the same ones over and over again, and the person can recognize them. But there's some others where they do come and go. And there's also, if the patient doesn't know how to fight back or doesn't increase their vibration by moving on a positive spiritual path, Okay, there's another one waiting in the wings to be sent in there. So if we get rid, see, that's what I wonder about exorcists. You know, okay, they get rid of one, but if the person doesn't increase their vibration and start moving on a positive spiritual path, it's like the Bible says, you sweep out the house. If you don't replace the stuff you swept out, you know, these things are going to come back, and they're going to come back with reinforcements. And I've seen that over and over again, where the person thinks, oh, it's like taking an antibiotic. I'm cured. I don't have to worry about it anymore. And then they find that there's another voice shows up. It doesn't work that way.
Yeah.
They have to stay on it. So here's these 23 patterns that are, and anybody can see them. I mean, these are in plain sight. And I'll quickly go through them without going into detail. But you don't need any kind of special education to see these things, these patterns. The bottom line, if they're running patterns, they can't be hallucinations. So what the psychiatric mafia is feeding the population and the graduate schools and the medical schools is a crock of crap. You know?
Could it be more, Jerry? Could it be absolutely set in the very idea that the medicine is there to send people crazy, and from sending them like crazy, these entities attached to them, and those that created the meds did this deliberately? So it's all interconnected. Everything is interconnected, or is this?
I think you're right. There is an interconnection there, because these drugs don't make anybody better. All they do is suppress psychiatric symptoms. There's all kinds of side effects with the antidepressants. Even on Prozac, I think they got a warning on the Prozac bottle, may cause suicidal ideation. You know?
But could it be, Jerry, that they were actually made for this specific reason, rather than made to help people? Was it made to open them up so that this energy can come into them because they are of this nature now, this new energy frequency that they are?
You know, I think that might, and I don't know for sure, it might be true nowadays. But back when these phenothiazines were first discovered, they were discovered by accident in a French dye lab. You know, people working with dyes back in the late 1800s, they saw that their staff working with this particular dye would start getting drowsy and having these sedative effects. So somebody got hold of that, and they chemist, and they kind of distilled the phenothiazine part out of it. They wanted to test it in Europe, but at that time the Freudians were under control in Europe. So they brought it over to the United States, to one of the psych hospitals over here. They administered it to the psychiatric population and saw that they all calmed down. They didn't have any trouble with them. They were all gorked out. They were all sedated, walking around in la-la land. They were able to reduce their staff. They were able to reduce the number of fights. You know, they saved a lot of money. You know, so this was a miracle drug as far as the psychiatric mafia was concerned. They were in a battle with neurology over who was going to dominate the psychiatric field. Psychiatry jumped on this new drug like a duck on a June bug. They took it over. They formed a bond with the pharmaceutical agencies and actually became their drug pushers. But they didn't know for the first 10 years why those phenothiazine worked. They had no idea. You know, they saw that it worked. They didn't know why it worked. They had no idea why it worked. Finally, they came up with this chemical imbalance crap.
So, Jerry, why would he say, so let's just say somebody's admitted to a hospital. Are they normally, before they're put onto these antidepressants, and are they normally on some kind of drug? Are they normally drug addicts or alcoholics? Or
yeah, from drugs. What they'll do is they'll try to self-medicate. So they'll find alcohol, or they'll find they'll find cocaine or something else. But you know, alcohol and cocaine are the worst things they could be using. And these voices will actually tell them, well, if you got to take a drug, why don't you take one you enjoy? instead of taking this crap that the psychiatrists are giving you that makes you feel like crap, why don't you go out and get some alcohol and just kind of live it up, or get some cocaine or something else that makes you feel good instead of this stuff that makes you feel like crap.
Jerry,
actually tell them this.
Jerry, can I fill in a piece of the jigsaw here?
Sure.
Because I'm coming at it from a different angle, and I think this is. I knew it'd be amazing tonight. I knew you'd be amazing. This is blowing me away. So, in the years that I've been doing this work as a healer, I noticed that within bars, within places where
you're full of them,
where see, I have a different take, but it's the same take as you. It's just a different way of saying it. I call these spirits trapped in between two worlds. They're neither spirit in the light, or they're neither human. They're in between for a certain
earthbound entities.
Okay, so I just call them spirit in denial. So you imagine, and this is what happened to me. A guy in this world was a bit of an abuser. He drunk himself to death, and he didn't end up going into the light. So he's trapped in between two worlds, but he needs to get the same fix, the same drug as he did in this world. So he frequents
hang around in bars.
Right. This is what I write about. So from there, that person starts to maybe drink more without realizing, because it's attached to that person. Why did I drink so much? And all of a sudden, these entities somehow gently, cleverly manipulate you to do things. And thus from there, they end up where you are. Does that make sense?
It makes perfect sense.
Wow.
With an alcoholic, the alcoholic isn't the only one drinking. These spirits will get in there and they will put these thoughts in their mind. Oh, well, you can go visit your old friends in the bar and not drink anything, or you can walk by the bar, or you can just have one drink. The building up to a drink, and they get them in there, and then because they need to get high too. So I had one guy. This guy was an Apache Indian who was a chronic alcoholic and so violent that they sent him to our prison because the Apache police couldn't handle this guy, and he was a spooky guy. So he told me these stories of these. He actually saw these things. He said there was a bar in Phoenix where these dead alcoholics were stacked up over that bar all the way up to the sky as far as he could see. Wow. So he could see these things. So he said if he went anywhere near that bar and he drank, they would jump in there and they would take over and he would just drink himself silly. He said that they walked his girlfriend into traffic and she was hit by a truck. And let me see, what was the story he told me? Yeah, he verified that once they get in, they hang around these bars and they wait for somebody to get to a certain degree of drunkenness, and then they jump in there and they take over.
And that's because the frequency of the human body and the energetic frequency when you're drinking goes to chaos, and out of chaos they're able to step in to that chaos. Whereas if you're healthy, strong, happy, you're feeling great, they cannot, or in my humble opinion, thus far, I've never met anybody who was balanced and happy and healthy ever have this attachment to them. This is why my issue, I have this one issue where why was I taken over? And my belief and understanding of that is because I was working in this spiritual field.
Exactly. They wanted to take you out.
Yeah.
And they did the same to me.
They really did.
They did the same to me. It was years ago, right before my big interview with Freeman Fly over here. He's a big podcaster. Yeah. We were scheduled
Chris
to go
watches
on.
Freeman Fly.
Yeah, watching for years.
Like 2 weeks before that interview, I was down in Mexico on vacation. Woke up, went to bed normally one night. Woke up in the morning, I couldn't move my arm, my right arm. It was extremely painful, and it was getting more and more painful. I didn't injure it. I didn't do anything to it. There was no past injury to it.
I can verify that as well. I can
Yep.
verify what you've said by
It
many
was-
clients.
Yep. There was a staph infection that just blew up in my arm. And when I got back to the United States, I ended up in the emergency room right away. Next morning, I was being operated on. It came out of nowhere.
Yeah.
And I know it was them. I feel it in my gut. It was them. They knocked me out of that interview for 6 months, and Freeman waited. So thank heavens. But your bar story reminds me of one patient. I hadn't thought about this in years. This was a psychotic prisoner I was working with. Okay, so he lived here in Tucson, and there's a bar on one of the streets here in Tucson that looks like an old pirate ship, but it's a bar. They call it the Gentleman's Club, but actually it's a strip club where, everybody meets. He said he went in there one night. He's hearing the voices. He's looking around at all the women, and he saw one he was attracted to, and the voice said, "No, this other one." Kept going, go meet her. So he said he did, and he took her home, and apparently she liked to have sex while she was being strangled, which was something that was foreign to me as far as any kind of ideation. So she liked to be strangled while she was having sex. And here's the voice, telling him, that's the one. She passed out while this was happening. He thought he had killed her, and he was freaked out, So he never listened to that voice again about that kind of stuff, But that's the kind of stuff they do. And I've even had one patient where one voice with a female wasn't doing a good enough job, wasn't making her miserable enough. So that one was replaced with another who made her more miserable.
Wow.
So there are different kinds of them.
They work in tandem. They work together like a team.
Well, in the person, in a particular person. So if there's 3 or 4 of them in a particular person, they work together as a team. But what's interesting is the ones in one person can't hear the ones in another. They don't communicate. It's only within that person that they communicate. So the ones that are in their heads, they might be sound like they're talking behind their back. Plotting different ways to kill the guy. Oh, maybe we ought to kill him by hanging. No, we'll kill him by poison. We'll poison his food. Well, no, there's a better way to kill him. Let's kill him this way. And here's the patient hearing this conversation about these voices who are plotting to kill him and ways that they're going to do it. So they work together in that way when they're assigned to the same person. But that group of voices will not communicate to another group of voices in another person, which is, I don't understand that. It just doesn't happen.
Can I ask you a question, Jerry?
Sure.
Have you ever used any kind of herb or any natural smoke or anything that Mother Earth has done that was able to actually clear the entity or anything like that you can say you got rid of it?
No, not by physical means. This is not a physical problem. This is a spiritual problem. Mm-hmm. Now there are physical things that they don't like. They hate the Gregorian chants.
Oh, good. Look at my website. Gregorian chant. Listen, Jerry, listen.
I've never seen your website, but they hate the Gregorian chants.
I knew this would be amazing. You're confirming something so amazing, Jerry. Out of all the music I ever played when I was clearing these entities out of the houses, look on my website. French Gregorian chants was the only thing that works. And if anybody's watching who knows me, verify it now. I have music that clears them. It's 24 hours, and you play it all the way through, as well as the other things that I use as well. But thanks, Jerry. This is like.
You made someone's day there, Jerry.
You've made his day there, Jerry.
I'm not crazy. It does work. Listen, there's a guy here. Listen to him. It's true.
I'm not crazy.
There's some other things that work too. The 23rd Psalm, they can't stand it. For them, repetition of the 23rd Psalm is like burning them. The prisoners have told me that it's like throwing worms on a hot frying pan. That's how they react to the 23rd Psalm.
And 23rd
The 23rd and the 91, Psalm 91.
Is the Walk Through the Valleys of Death one, Mark?
Yeah.
I think, is it? Yeah, yeah.
What, you fear no evil? That one?
Yeah, that one.
Yeah.
That's not the one from, what's it called?
Pulp Fiction.
Pulp Fiction.
I think it might be.
I never saw Pulp Fiction. I kind of stay away from that kind of stuff.
Yeah, me too.
I have enough problems without that.
Jerry, this is brilliant. Sorry, Dom.
Sorry, mate. Yeah, one quick thing.
We set off the reaction there, didn't we?
Yeah, we sure got one. Yeah. A couple of quick stories, Jerry. I've been asked to ask you. Shadow people.
Yeah.
Yeah. So there's some stories here. Mark's going to be even more, hopefully get more excited. There was
I'm already done. I'm already up here, mate. That's enough. I can go home now. It's like, thank you for the validation.
There was one story where you were talking, and where the voices were telling someone. There's a couple of stories. Anyway, I'll let you go on about shadow people, and I'll.
Okay, you want to hear about shadow people? We'll go to shadow people. This isn't going to help anybody recover, though. So they're associated with schizophrenics, and people, especially people who use meth, amphetamine. Amphetamine opens people up to these things like a giant crack. It just cracks their spiritual shield, blows it wide open, and just invites these things in. Amphetamine is one of the most dangerous drugs out there. Ouija boards are another one. You know, both of those invite these things in. You know, very dangerous. So, any meth addict, you can anybody who's been using meth for any length of time, you can ask them, have you seen the shadow people? Yeah, they have. Now, what I saw with the prisoners, I mean, there was a period of time before meth came out where it just wasn't there. All of a sudden, the prison started filling with meth addicts who were psychotic, and I found that odd. So, you know, when they started telling me about the shadow people, something like I'd never heard about that before. But meth addict after meth addict after, the shadow people, they show up after using meth. And the way it starts is, you know, they'll shoot up meth or take meth, and they'll fly on their trip, and they'll feel like Superman, and they'll feel like great, like they rule the world, and it makes them feel wonderful. Then they'll start hearing voices, and they'll go, oh, they're hallucinations. They'll go away when I come down. And they do. So when they first start, they start hearing voices. They're nasty voices. They're the same voices psychotics hear. You know, but when they come down, they go away. Now that may last for a period of weeks or months until one day they don't go away. And they're there forever. They're stuck. They're just as psychotic as any of the people that are, you know, locked up in a psych ward. You know, they have the same symptoms, the same schizophrenia, everything.
I remember, Jerry, last time we spoke, and by total coincidence, the first time we spoke, and in between that, I was watching a video about someone who was reading auras, and they were saying people have really bad addiction, especially to meth and crack and stuff like that. Their aura has like a chip in it. I remember saying to you, and I think it was when we were on with George, and George kind of agreed, that maybe the crack is how they actually somehow getting through their aura. I don't know what you think about that, Matt. But it was just funny because I've just seen this when we were, and it kind of all made sense.
Normally, it's the what I see is at the back of the head. There's something at the back of the head here that I always found.
That's where they're usually attached, the back of the head, or back right where the base of the spine. They're back there.
Right, exactly, just here. And that what I noticed was through energy work. So when you're actually doing work on people, you can close your eyes and basically I call it scanning. You scan the whole body when they're sat there, and you go to the back of the head and you'll feel this burning on your hand, and you realize something's very wrong there. And that was my indication where I knew this person is open to bad stuff.
Mm-hmm. That's where they usually hang on. But when I started hearing about these things, the prisoners would tell me, you know, and I'd say, what do they look like? And he said, well, they look like, most of the time, three-dimensional humans, just three-dimensional shadows, you know, in human shape. But they take other kinds of shapes. They take monster shapes or blob shapes or midget shapes or whatever. They usually appear at night. They're darker than the rest of the room. Now, what I found clinically, and I use this as a clinical indicator with how bad off some of these patients were, because my last 10 years I spent working in psych crisis and emergency rooms in all the major hospitals around Tucson. So in order to determine how bad off the guy was, if they saw their eyes, they saw the eyes on the shadow people, they were leagues worse than the ones who didn't see their eyes. If they just saw a three-dimensional shadow with no face and no eyes, they weren't anywhere near as bad off as the ones who saw the eyes. And if they saw the eyes, they were one of two colors. They were either red or they were lime green. Neither one of those colors I would like to see in somebody's eyes. So I found that out. Now, what was interesting is I ran into a prisoner. He and his friend were both meth addicts. They'd been injecting meth for a good while. They were interested in the shadow people, and they were doing it. He was telling me about an experiment they ran to try to find out what these things were. And as soon as I heard that, my ears was like, well, okay, tell me about that right now. I want to hear it. So what they did is they wanted to know whether they were both seeing the same shadow people or whether they were seeing independent shadow people that they couldn't verify with each other. So they both brought meth in that they could inject. They drove out to the middle of the desert here onto an Indian reservation, like down this far dirt road where nobody was, and they parked their truck there. Okay. Then one guy injected the meth and waited for it to take place, and he started seeing the shadow people. The other guy stayed sober, and here's this guy who injected. They're standing outside the truck, and he's going, okay, one appeared just over there by that tree. You see him? The other guy goes, no, I don't see him. Well, how about the one over there by the cactus? No, don't see him either. So after they compared notes for a good while, they realized that the guy on the meth could see him. The guy not on the meth couldn't see him. Okay? So the other guy injected up. He waited till that took effect, and then they started comparing notes. Well, you see the guy, you see the one over there by the shadow? Now, one thing the prisoners told me was, this is before I ever got to these two guys, is that if they see you paying attention to them and they see you can see them, they start moving toward you. I've had that over and over and over again. Yeah, that's the reaction I got. And that's the reaction they got, because not a single one of those prisoners, and they're usually big, burly, nasty guys.
It almost sounds like you're opening the door to the devil.
The portal.
Do you understand what I mean? Like if they won't come in unless you let them. So a bit like, I'm looking at you now, so it gives them.
Well, I don't know about that, but what would happen is not a single one of those rough, tough prisoners ever hung around long enough to allow that thing to catch up with. These are nasty guys. They took off. They didn't wait. So and that was story after story. If you see them, you pay attention to them, they start moving in on you, one by one or by group.
You've never known anybody who's actually stood there and allowed that to happen. Then I'm a little bit confused, because is that different from the ones that are attached to your back or the ones that you heard talk? Are these?
I think they are. Because I did talk to one patient that said she felt one walk through her, and she could feel it walk through her. I don't think these guys attach to anything. I've never heard them actually physically or psychologically hurt anybody other than scaring them half to death.
Do they all come from the same place, Jerry, or are they all coming from different?
I have no idea where the shadow people come from. None. Now I did have one experience with them, and it was one of the spookiest ones in my entire career. But get back to and I'll tell you about that. But to get back to these two prisoners out in the middle of the desert. So the one saw them, he saw them. The other one shot up. He saw them. They're comparing notes. They could actually see each other. I mean, so one could say, okay, what's that one over there doing? And the guy said, well, he's doing this or doing. So they compared notes. They were both seeing the same ones. Now, as they're doing this, they're moving in on them. they're moving toward them. And it wasn't just one, there were several of them. And then as they're comparing notes, they're kind of distracted by comparing notes. Then they see a bunch of them coming out of the desert, all moving toward them. So they freaked out. They got in the truck. They locked the door. They stayed there and they watched these things. They didn't take off. They stayed there and watched them. Then all of a sudden, this guy reported that the back of the pickup truck went down like a giant boulder had been dropped in it. The front jumped up, and they looked into the back, out the back window, and the back of the truck was full of these things. And that alarmed me because I didn't think they could affect physical reality. That's what I was telling myself. Oh, these aren't dangerous. These are spiritual something or other. They can't affect physical reality. When he told me the back of that truck jumped up, that kind of got my attention. So what they did is they started the truck and they drove out of there almost wrecking the truck. And I asked them, did they follow you? Did they follow you out? And he said, no, they didn't. Okay. So there was that experience, but it kind of shook me up because I didn't think they could affect physical reality. And, why would a prisoner tell a psychologist this story? That's a dangerous thing to tell a prison psychologist. Yeah. You don't tell prison psychologists that kind of stuff.
There's also this understanding with, like, most people get this, that when we're asleep, there's sometimes we can get into kind of a paralysis, but at the same time, we can also have this feeling that something is pushing on our chest and pushing us down into the bed. That is a physical reality.
That happened to me a number of times. Every time a prisoner completely got rid of his voices, they were gone. This guy was free of them. That night at about 3 a.m, I felt something crushing me down into the bed, and it was terrifying. Yeah, I couldn't see anything. It happened time after time after time.
That goes back through history, Mark, that story.
8 years old, it started with me till I was 12 years old, and it stopped every single night. So I know it's reality. It was my reality. Now, psychology will tell you, oh, no, that's because your father was abusive.
They'll make up any kind of bull crap to, it's within their purview of whatever. Right. See, they're totally out of sync. And we're spiritual beings. Psychology and psychiatry do not take that into account at all. And until they do, they're not going to have anything that works. And these toxic drugs don't work. So, fast forwarding to I was out of the prison. I'd retired from the prison. It's like, got out of there because prisoners were recovering, and they didn't like that. The chief psychologist didn't like that. So they put me under investigation for experimenting with prisoners without departmental permission. And they just made my life miserable. Now, they tried to get evidence on me, but none of the prisoners would talk to them. They wouldn't tell them anything. So, and I certainly didn't tell them anything. So they knew something was happening. They knew these people were recovering. I thought they'd be happy about it. They weren't. They were pacing around like demons. Like, what can we do to stop this? What can we do to stop this? So it was, I couldn't believe my eyes. I couldn't. Here they, here's this guy he's going to leave the prison normal. He's not going. They don't have to pay for any psychotic drugs for him, which are expensive. They won't have to pay for those anymore. This guy's recovered.
You're destroying the business model, Jared.
And they went nuts over it. So there was this one prisoner where, they were investigating him. And the investigator said, well, what's he doing in the sessions with you? And the guy said, he's helping us, not like you, asshole. He could have done all day without saying that, because that really set him off. So this psychologist saw in his records that he had an MMPI, Minnesota Multiphasic Personality Test, that showed that he was psychotic, according to their gold standard test. Okay. So he asked this prisoner, he said, would you be willing to take another one? And the guy said, sure, I'll take another one. So he gave him another one. He already had the first one that was a valid profile. It was a solid, valid profile. The second one came out, the guy was non-psychotic. He didn't have a psychotic peak anymore. He looked at those things, and here was evidence this guy had cleared it. He was clear. They went nuts. They went nuts. You know, it's like, you got to stop that. What are you doing in there? You know, we know you're doing something. You know, it's like, you know, it just became miserable. It became miserable. But
Jerry, I want to get a couple of stories out of you.
Okay, I was about to tell you.
Because I think we're already seeing that we're going to have to come back again, aren't we? I know Mark wants to come back again.
Okay, this is the epitome of the. You wanted to know about the shadow people. Okay?
No. I know. Can you remember the story that you told regarding the voice that told that guy to go and find that money, or that steal the cannabis in the truck? With that?
Oh, that one. Yeah. Well, let me finish with the.
Sorry.
This is the last bit of the shadow people. Okay, so I'm working psych. I'm in the ER, doing psych crisis, and this was like on Christmas Eve, back in the 90s, I guess. So Christmas Eve, it was kind of quiet. Here comes this guy in, shaking like a leaf. You know, they bring him in. He's just shaking the whole time. He's just shaking like a leaf. So I bring him in, start talking to him. He was a meth addict. He's been injecting meth for over 10 years. And that got my attention. He should have been dead years ago. I mean, they just don't live, when they inject meth, they don't live that long. So that got my attention up. So I started asking him questions about the shadow. You seen the shadow people? Oh, yeah, I see them all the time. Okay. You seen their eyes? Yeah, I see their eyes. What color are their eyes? Green. Okay. So he was telling me what I already knew. I didn't lead him. You know, so I started asking him. I said, did they ever talk to you? Because they never speak. I'd never talked to anybody where they spoke to them. And he said, oh, yeah. I've heard them. I said, well, what did they sound like? And he said, it was a high, screechy voice, you know, like it reminded me of dragging your fingers across a chalkboard. Beautiful. You know, and he mimicked the sound of what they sounded like. And it just sent chills up my spine. Yeah. Just the mimicking of the sound. So I asked him another question after that. And what happened is he stopped shaking. He was shaking like a leaf the whole time for hours. Since the first time he came in the ER, he's just quivering, he's shaking. He went stark still. He stopped shaking. I looked into his eyes, and his eyes were like dark pools of hatred. I mean, just dark pools. It seemed like they went down to infinity. And it was just this deep, dark, cold hatred that I've never, ever felt in my life coming through those eyes. You know, and I was like mortified. That wasn't him anymore. Something else was looking through those eyes. You know? And I'm like shocked. But you can't show any fear. That's the last thing you do with a psychotic patient. You don't show fear because it's like running from a dog that's attacking you. So I'm sitting there having to stare into the eyes of this thing. He is stark still. And it's like, I never felt such hatred in my life. They were like dark pools of hatred that just went to infinity. And I'm just having to stare at this. And it's like, I don't know how long I can take this. Nobody spoke anything. I didn't say anything. He didn't say anything. And then after a while, when I'm like, I don't know how much longer I can take this, boom, went back. He came back to who he was. Those eyes disappeared. He was back again. He started shaking again, you know. And the next question, he said something about, I asked him something and about what they did, or did he have any interactions where they did anything to him or something like that. As soon as I asked that thing came back again, you know, or no, first I got the information. So I asked him, I said, what did they tell you? What did they tell you to do? He said one night he said they told him to go out to the highway and jump in front of a vehicle. So he did that. He said he jumped in front of the vehicle. He got hit. He got knocked to the side of the road. And he said, as he's laying there, he said all these shadow people circled around him. And he looked up and they told him, you're not hurt, get up. And he said he got up and he said he wasn't hurt. So they said, do it again. So he said he jumped in front of another vehicle after he ran from the first one, I guess. And then he got hit again. Same thing again. They told him to get up. He wasn't hurt.
Could they be feeding from the suffering and the pain and the trauma?
I don't know what they're doing. The only thing I can see consistently to what the shadow people do is they scared the daylights out of people.
It sounds like Monsters Inc. almost.
Yeah, it's like, I think the Indians called them the Watchers. They saw them. Maybe they're passing communication to something or other, but they appear in people's bedrooms. They're darker than the rest of the room. You turn the light on and they're gone. I saw one out of the corner of my eye once. It was pretty solid. It was pretty good size. But I've never seen one straight up.
Do you want to hear one of my stories of being in the room working with somebody who was let's say, you can call it a possession or taken over, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah, go for it.
This was within 5 years of being a full-time healer. The person was brought to me and was lying down, and you described the look, and the look was exactly the look I got. And you said you had to be strong and don't show any fear. That's exactly my first encounter. I heard a voice inside me, like myself, saying, do not be frightened of this instant. Do not be fearful. And then all I heard was these words: the darkness cannot be where light shines. And I kept repeating that. Now, I am not religious because I was abused by a priest once. So I have no religion in me at all. However, at that point when my hand was on that person, I was saying the Our Father and Hail Mary. I also got a bottle of water, which was given to me the week before by Cecilia, who got it from Fatima, which is a place of holiness. And I was pushed back by this energy that my head flew around and fixated on the bottle. And I just thought, this is like Exorcist when I was a kid. Yeah. So I poured the water over this person, and I didn't know what she said till afterwards because she was Spanish. And basically it says it's burning. She was saying it's burning.
I always wondered what would happen if somebody would do that.
I did. I poured it all over her head. It went into her eyes and all over her neck. And she was saying it's burning in Spanish, right? And it took 2 hours. And after that 2 hours, that look, what you talk about, it was gone. It disappeared. That woman has never been affected since. And I know the woman personally, never been affected since till this day. So it's interesting how that was my first so-called exorcism. I think the word is kind of bullshit. I just think it's the light of love and healing has the power to heal these things. And a healer, if they understand this, they can target that energy. And if they stay there long enough, and if they trust and believe long enough, you can heal people from these things. And that's what I did for 2 decades. I healed many people with this, the eyes that you talk about, that you can look deep into their eyes, and you can't explain. It's so unexplainable because there's no words when you look deep into those eyes. It's like you're looking into another place, it's so difficult to explain, but I relate to everything that you're saying. That's why it's so exciting to share a healer's perspective to somebody who works where you worked. So that was one of my first stories. So I just wanted to share that with you.
Just a quick observation. Just a quick observation for it. You see, I know I said this earlier, but you see all these things on a lesser scale in certain human beings, don't you? Like the one who wants to destroy themselves, they get a good job and then they screw it up, but it's almost, you think you've kind of done that on purpose. And also the person who you go in a room and you feel like they're draining, like I call them brain drains, or energy. They're just draining your brain of energy. And then also, like you were saying about the eye, I've seen, I'm not saying to the extent that Jerry said where the eyes go black and whatever, but you know when you're talking to someone and I'm not saying they get argumentative or they're saying something nasty, and you see a darkness go in their eyes, don't you? Is that like a milder version, do you think, those three things of a possession or a voice, or it's like a less obvious version of what you're saying?
Well, with regular schizophrenics, I don't see that. The only time I ever saw anything like that, well, I've seen it a few times, but it's not the general case. It's more like, you see them cock their eyes back and say, well, the voices are saying this now. Right. There's not any weird look that comes into their face. It's just like, no, they're telling me this now.
Right.
And they do try to interfere. So
I don't know, because I didn't believe that it was important to talk to them. I was always guided to say that they have no power over me, and I will not interact, and I will not allow this energy to destroy my client or even interfere with me. That's why it's interesting to listen to somebody who wanted to listen to those voices, because I just would not let that happen, because I don't know where that would have gone for me.
I ran into the same thing while I was working with the prisoners in prison. I read I forgot what his name is. He wrote Energy Releasement Therapy, or Spirit Releasement Therapy was the name of the book. And he would talk them into the light. So I studied that for a while in the prison and found that, yeah, you could walk them into the light. And once they went into the light, that one was gone. But after I saw that it worked, I got this feeling that I shouldn't be doing that.
Why?
I don't know. It was just this feeling that I shouldn't be doing that until just recently, where I saw that this maze system that I'm working with, that works with all kinds of trauma, and it works faster and quicker than anything else I've ever seen. The mace energy system. I've been training in that now for probably close to a year. And it goes in there, cleans out trauma just like that. I mean, it's quicker than grease lightning. It takes the spirit into account. Okay. Where was I going with that? Oh, the talking, and that system doesn't work on a straight up. What it'll do, it'll remove the stuff that these things feed off of. Okay, so it's basically starving them to death by removing all these traumas that they trigger all the time. Okay? But the person still needs to increase their vibration. They still need to be moving along this positive spiritual path. Otherwise, what I found is they will come back. I haven't. You're probably the first one where I've heard where you got rid of it and it didn't come back.
Yeah, didn't. Not one of my clients that I've worked on ever had a recall of this issue ever again, and I've done loads. And this is like, to this day, I'm proud of. My understanding, my experience is, hey, it's easy to get rid of. This isn't a Hollywood exorcism where their head's turning right round or their body's elevating off the floor. Yes, their head does turn, and yes, their body does lift off the ground through the balls of their feet and their shoulders, and it may look like that, but it's Hollywood. This real life is, yes, there is something that's causing these spasms. Yes, there is something that is happening. But it's not that important, because I said to my wife back then, I'm no longer married, I said, I can't explain this, Susie, but it's like I've done it before. It's like I know what I'm doing. It doesn't fear me. It doesn't scare me. I'm stronger than whatever is inside this person. And so, but I also want to say to everybody who's listening, because we've gone down one path here, and that one path is we're talking about negative spirit, but I've spent most of my time with positive spirit, with the times that children who are not medicated up, who are happy and joyful, that their mums come with their children and say, I'm a little bit worried my daughter can hear voices and speak to spirit. And there is beautiful spirit world that do connect with us. And as we're children, we can feel that. And that is not negative. In my humble opinion, I have only seen love and healing and conversation, which is pure, drawing angels, talking about the most amazing thing that a child wouldn't be able to talk about. The only time I see this bad stuff happening is on medication, is on alcohol, and everything what Jerry said. So there's two sides to this. And one side is, like I said, the darker stuff, and then there is the spirit world that I believe comes and channels beautiful energy to children. And even at times that I had clients who came to me to 2 years who said, don't get rid of this beautiful voice that I'm hearing. And how did that happen? It could have been Kundalini. They could have been doing yoga, Kundalini yoga. Boom, they're awake. And now this voice that guides and loves them and isn't tricking them. I never saw any tricks on that side. But when it was alcohol, when it was drugs, when it was heavy abuse, another one, heavy abuse. Yes. One of my clients was raped by 7 monks in Spain, 7 monks for 7 days. And he then came to me and he was riddled with this entity that, like, this needs to go. We need to get rid of this now. So there is the spirit world, and we need to differentiate between the two. And I think Jerry's a perfect example that he dealt with the worst kind of energy, and I feel that I dealt with mainly the loving and kind and caring spirit world, or whatever you want to call it, of not pushing, not forcing, not coming in, not telling you what to do, not telling you to kill yourself, but actually really beautiful things that helped my clients create. The others just destroy. Just to destroy.
Yeah, you got to be careful there too, because the bad ones will fake like they are. It's common for them to go.
Feel it, though, Jerry. You can feel it. You can feel it. You know, it's like an energy. You feel fear. You feel confused. You feel like this isn't normal. When you're with beautiful spirit, there's only love. It's just beautiful. There's a difference, and you can feel it, right?
Most people can't.
Oh,
especially the ones who are being told by the voices, "Oh, we're your spirit guides," you know,
right. Okay.
and they do know stuff that person wouldn't have known. There's no way they could have known. Yeah. You know, I've seen that over and over again, where one voice told this prisoner, "Hey, watch out for this guy down there. He's gonna attack you." You know, so a few days later, that prisoner was in the shower. His head was wet. He was pushing a comb through his hair and whipping the water back of him. The same guy walked through the door at the same time. He whipped that back and hit the guy with water, and the guy attacked him just like the voice said it would.
Wow.
You know, the story that Dom was wanting me to tell about the guy who went to the marijuana. Now this guy completely recovered. I mean, he was recovered when he told me this story. He wasn't hearing voices when he told me this story. So what they did is he was in trouble with the cops all the time. He had a long arrest record. He was in San Diego, California, using cocaine. When the voices came and told him, "Hey, we know where there's a sesamolia pot field up in Oregon. You know, go get yourself 2 burlap sacks and take your money, the $250 or something he had, and we'll show you where it is." So this guy trusted those voices so much, he got in his car, he got 2 burlap sacks. He drove all the way from San Diego up to Oregon, which is a long ways. It's like, 1,000 miles or something like that. It's a long ways. So here the voices telling him where to go, turn after turn after turn after turn. So finally he gets to this dirt road. He goes down like 23 miles of dirt road to the base of a mountain, and the dirt road ends there. And he stops and he asked voices, he said, "Okay, what now?" You know, and they say, "There's a path off to your left. Get your burlap sacks and your machete. walk up that path. So he walked up that path for several hours, and he came to this giant sesamilia pot field in the middle of this big forest. And the voice said, "Okay, cut it down. It's yours." So he started cutting down these plants, filling up these burlap sacks with this marijuana, which I think was illegal at the time. And he takes it, brings it back to his car, and he goes, "Okay, now what?" And the voice said, "I know where a park where you can sell it." Okay, so it takes him to the park, and sure enough, he's selling it all over the place in this park. He gets all this money, and then he bought all the crack cocaine he could handle. He bought all the prostitutes he could handle. He bought all the alcohol he could handle. So he was having the life of Riley as far as that stuff's concerned. But then he said the voices were fishermen. They wanted to go fishing. He was a fisherman too. He liked to fish. So they told him to go buy a fishing rod, and they were going to go fishing on the Columbia River. So he takes the fishing rod, and he takes the bait and stuff, and he said he was the only one on the river catching anything that day. He was pulling in fish after fish. He said the voices told him where to put the hook, where to put the bait, when to move on, when the thing was fished out. He said he was catching fish after fish after fish. So he did that for like 3 or 4 weeks. And then he ran out of money again. And he said, "Okay, I need to go back up there and get some more pot." The voices told him, "No, they know you. They're onto you. They know you've been stealing their pot. They're up there waiting for you. You go up there, they're going to kill you. Take what money you have and go back to San Diego." And he did. So
is that how they win people over, Jerry?
Yeah, and you notice all that stuff he was doing wasn't good for him. The crack cocaine, the prostitutes. I mean, all of these things were putting him deeper and deeper and deeper into trouble. And then when he got back, he got thrown in the prison again, and that's where I saw him.
Yeah. It's interesting, eh? So fascinating.
So Mark, what is it you do to get rid of these things?
For me, it was sage.
Yeah, that's another thing I use, sage.
And most people don't really. I only did this because I just felt okay. So I first started with the sage in the house when there was entities in there where there was not very nice. So they would break mirrors. They would break. Mainly mirrors they would break. I don't know why it was always mirrors, but they would break mirrors. They would also, do things that would scare people. Okay, so now I need to get rid of them. So I tried to talk to them, and in spirit, I call them spirit in denial. They're just not interested. They don't listen. Most of them don't listen, but some do.
I haven't found that sage alone. They don't like it, but
Well,
I haven't found that alone gets rid of it. It hasn't gotten rid of them. They just don't like it.
Well, let me tell you something why I'm saying this, because the first time I did a house, it didn't work, only for a bit, right? So I'm thinking, I went back and I said, I'll do it again then. So I've got this sage stick in my hand, little sage stick, going around, right, all the house. And then I realized it's the smoke that they don't like. So then what I did was get 5 sage sticks, break them up, put them in a big jar, set that on fire, and it was like a smoke-filled house with no space anywhere. No space for any. It's like every space is filled with smoke. You can't breathe. You can't see. It's like being in a car in a foggy night and you can't see 1 foot in front of you. It has to be that thick. And then you close all the doors and windows. You leave it for at least 1 to 2 hours. And then every time I came back and opened doors and windows, I never had to return to another single house thereafter, because I learned how to sage properly.
Okay, and that's the only thing you did was just filled the room full of sage?
I was in Slovenia a few months ago, and I didn't want to go in this house. It was the only house I couldn't go in. I've got to be honest, it was just too much. I've got to the age now that I haven't got that energy anymore. And I could feel myself getting aggressive when I was going into it. And I knew, okay, this is heavy. Because normally if I get aggressive, that's the energy of whatever's in that house. So I got a friend of mine to do it. I did it first, and I thought I'd done it right. I came away and it was still the same the day after. And then my friend said, I'll do it. And I missed a room. There was a secret room. And they found the room and they did all of it and it was gone. So the attic, the basement, and there was a secret room, and she found the secret room. So it goes in the drawers, in the wardrobes. The smoke has to go everywhere for it to work, and then it's gone. And that was my trick. And I used to tell, and I used to get so much negativity from spiritual people when I said, look, I think I've got the answer. This is the way to do it. You've got to fill every nook and cranny, and you've got to smoke it out so much that you can't breathe and your eyes are watering, and you've done everywhere. Then it works. And that was my truth.
Okay, now that's for haunted houses, right? Now, what do you do for what do you do for the voices? How do you get rid of the voices?
Around the person. They would sit in the center of the room, and I would fill them with smoke for 10, 15 minutes, and I wouldn't stop blowing, and they'd be coughing and spewing. And after that, it would be gone after a healing session. So my hand would be either on their head or on their heart and their back, and I'd just be there for about an hour to 2 hours, and then it was gone. Mm-hmm. That's how it worked with me. And I never had to go back to anybody.
Can they do that by themselves?
I don't know, to be honest. I don't know. I don't know. I wish I could answer that properly, because when people are in such a bad place, if you see, I don't know if you've ever been attached, but if you're in a bad place, you're not really capable of doing the right thing, because the energy which is within you and around you, it's like a constant battle, and you need to be in a place of love and healing to be able to heal yourself from that. So when this happened to me, I rung Shirley, who's passed away now, went straight down to her house, and luckily enough there was 3 other people there, and they saged me, they did prayers on me, and then it was gone. But what was interesting about that was I actually knew who it was who came into me. I actually found out who it was. And I said to my wife then, you know, your mum, the friend who's with her now in Spain, does she happen to have a son that died? And she said, yeah. I said, he's inside me now. And he wanted me to go and tell her the most awful things. And I was having a battle with this man saying, I am not going anywhere. And he was fighting me, and he was giving me his pain. So I was getting side pains, and the side pains, I realized that was his liver and kidneys failing. And I was getting angry, and I wanted to beat somebody up, and I was swearing like words that I wasn't used to swearing. And I'm like, what the hell? And then I realized I needed help. So I know this personally. I know it's real. I know it exists. I've been working all this time doing it, so I get everything that you're saying, Jerry.
I think what you guys have done is show this exists from 2 different angles. And Jerry's seen it in a clinical environment. Mark's seen it not necessarily in a but outside at some sort of institutional, although we're all involved in some kind of institution. And that's what fascinates me about this, that how Jerry's come at it from a totally different angle, and you have, and it's still there. And then you've got people in the chat who've experienced it themselves and got themselves over it like I did. And, you know, so we know that something different, something outside, I'll call it extraterrestrial for want of a better word, is happening to try and control people. Some people are getting controlled via drugs. There's a massive MK Ultra operation been raging for the last 70 or 80 years that we know of. And is this part of it? I don't know. I think voices have been there for millennia. I think people have been having schizophrenic voices for a long time. So there's something bigger. And maybe the MK Ultra stuff is something trying to tap into this energy. Who knows? But there's certainly something there. And I think we're going to have another shot at this. We're coming up to 2.5 hours now. And I'd like to invite both of you on again at some point, won't we, Chris? If you're both up for for that chat. And I think going through those 23 items that you were going to go through, we'll never get through them, do we, Jerry?
We never did.
We never get through them.
The thing
I think
is,
we did last time. I think we got very close.
They're running patterns. If they're running patterns, they can't be hallucinations like the psychiatric mafia says. Now, they don't want any interference with the $34 billion they're making a year on the sale of these antipsychotic drugs.
Yeah.
They're slowly poisoning people. They don't care. Yeah. The bottom line is the money. You know, you look at what's happening in 46,000 Americans killed themselves here last year. The suicide rate was up 33%, you know, and it's increasing. Schizophrenia is increasing. What they're doing does not work. It's a failure. The Western mental health system that's based around these toxic drugs and the psychiatric mafia and big pharma does not work. Things are getting worse. We're flooded with more psychiatric drugs than we've ever had on the history of the planet. The murder rate is up. You know, the mental illness rate is up. The suicide rate is up. All the negative indicators are up. Look at we're at wars. You know, you got these. You look at these patterns that they run. If I read these things off, they match exactly what is going on with the mainstream media right now. They're feeding us these same patterns. They're the exact same things on a macroscopic scale.
Yeah.
So I don't know. Yeah, Biden's in that case, as far as I'm concerned. He's taken over. The deep state has taken over. You know, Trudeau's done. Biden's a freaking retard.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, we've got a similar sort of people running. Well, I don't even think they're running the show. That's the thing, because either these entities are, or the bloodlines, etc., that are involved in this. But yeah, it's flown by 2.5. Well, it's 2 hours, but because we had a 30-minute intro. But I mean, closing thoughts, anybody? Chris?
I was going to say, yeah, sage thing's interesting, Max. It was sage. I think it's proven to be an antioxidant, isn't it?
Yeah.
Sage,
antioxidant.
It naturally kills bacteria, which is interesting, isn't it?
It also clears. It also clears negative spirits. It also clears your negative energy. It does so much.
No, what I mean it's weird that there's a crossover there, Matt, where it's actually.
Of course there is.
Clinically proven. Like silver's an antioxidant, and it's used to kill vampires. Do you know what I mean?
Right.
It's a similar thing. It reminds me of.
You know, they don't like frankincense either.
Oh.
Don't get Max got to sleep tonight.
Don't get me started. Don't get me started. And do you know who's got the? Do you know who actually has bought all the best frankincense in the world?
Oh, Rothschilds.
No.
Oh.
The Catholic Church.
Right.
They've got it all.
Oh,
the best. The best.
Right.
I tried to buy it. It's like gold dust, so you're getting the really low grade. But the church bought the best. Interesting, eh?
Just another thing before just about the voices, an interesting thing to say again. What was that French Gregorian chants? Was it, Mark?
Yeah, it's on my website. If you want it, I'll send it to you, because it also comes with me doing a cleansing from a house. So I was helping spirit, trying to get spirit back into the light. So it's dual. You've got the Gregorian chants, and you've got me actually doing it's not exorcism, it's a cleansing of the house for the spirit to move into the light, and together it works really, really well. You can't hear me very much talking, but it was put in there deliberately. And people have said it's been absolutely tremendous for because you can have issues in your house and not even know it. And it happened to me. I was married to somebody called Jackie, and I mentioned this not so long ago. We got into the house. We were like this together. Within 2 months, we were split up. And everybody who moved into that house, everybody before us had split up. And when I got to that house, there was a burn mark in the middle of the grass. And the lady next door said, have you just moved in? I went, yeah. She said, have you got any children? Yeah, we've just got a little baby boy. And she went, oh dear. I said, I'm laughing. Why? She says, everybody who moves into that house splits up within the first 2 months. And it was absolutely right. And I wasn't even into any of this stuff. But it was right. Spirit has the ability to, when I'm saying spirit, I'm saying not the spirit, the kind spirit, the loving spirit, but some entities have the ability to manipulate us without us even knowing we were manipulated.
Yeah.
Work that out.
Right. Every negative thought you have, according to Sherry Sweeney, my co-author in the book, she fought these things for years. She says that every negative thought that comes into our minds is put there by the dark side.
What about the black screen, Jerry? Everything that we look at every day on the black screen, is that put there because that is evil personified, everything that we're looking at.
Yep. Every negative thought about yourself or anybody else comes from them. They also hate babies. They hate kids. They particularly hate kids. So when I had a patient come in the ER and had small kids, that was a big concern. They hate the name of Jesus. They hate the person reading the Bible. They hate holy water. They hate. They will break up all relationships. They go after. They tell the husband that the wife is cheating on him. They tell the wife the husband's cheating on him. They want to break up every relationship. They want to have the schizophrenic patient lock themselves in their bedroom, lock everybody out, and just listen to them all day long. That's the very worst thing that a parent can allow a schizophrenic child to do.
But as soon as they say they're hearing voices, they end up isolating themselves anyway because people will push them away.
Everything that you just said, Jerry, is exactly what all the leaders are doing to humanity.
Yes, exactly. They put face masks on, isolate yourself, break yourself up. You can't visit your friends. You can't leave town. You know this stupid crazy thing they're doing over there with these 15-minute cities. Totally insane. You guys got to resist these stupid bastards.
There's not enough sage. There's not enough sage to heal this madhouse that we're living in right now. I don't think.
Do not comply. No. Don't comply. I don't know how many stores I got thrown out of over here for not wearing that mask. I walked out of doctor's appointments because they made me wear the mask. I said, "You want the business or you want the mask?"
Yeah.
They said, "Well, it's our rule." I said, "Okay, adios."
Yeah.
See you later.
I think everyone will agree with that, Jerry.
Yeah, everyone will side with that. So
I wanted to
wrap up
just to emphasize
after Chris has asked this question.
Yeah, no, just emphasize, just for people to help them. That's why I wanted to mention that French Gregorian chant thing.
Totally.
It'd be helpful if people are having voices, and like Jerry says, the Psalms. Which one was it again, Jerry? The Psalms. Which one?
23 and 91.
23 and 91. Everyone, if
someone just asked for the name of the book. It's an amazing journey into the psychotic mind. Breaking the Spell of the Ivory Tower. And you can get it on lulu.com off my website. Yeah, somebody didn't see that.
Yeah, that's Jerry's book. It's brilliant. It's like a thriller, actually, isn't it? It's a really good read. And that's the way you wrote with Sherry.
It was brutal to write that thing. It took us 2 years.
Yeah. And also, we've got some more interviews with Jerry and Sherry on sheepfarm.co.uk.
Yes.
Yeah. Which
Sherry would be willing to come and talk to you guys just about that book and how that developed. And
yeah, that'd be great. Yeah, Sherry's the one person that we haven't spoke to, and we'd like to. She's been busy every time we're going to set something up.
Okay, I'll have her get in touch with you.
Yeah, we'll do another live one because this is I think people have enjoyed it, and I know there's been a few people in chat throwing out negative stuff, but do you know what? I think just because people are in the chat. And I don't look at it in negative, that you're here for a reason. So you need to think why you've actually gravitated to come here. I don't
understand why someone listens to it and they're making negative comments. I'd just turn
it off. They don't even realise, but they're your top fans.
Yeah. I just wouldn't listen though, would you, Mark? I'd just decide to go somewhere else. Why would you waste your time watching something you don't like?
But anyway,
because they're watching a football fans, because they love what you're saying. They're actually loving it, and sometimes they don't even realise it. It's okay. We love you. We love you.
You know, it's like Mark said, 20, 30 years ago, he lived at a house, and somebody was saying all this to him. He didn't understand it, didn't acknowledge it, didn't know it. I've been in the same boat. People have said stuff to me and didn't know about it. I'm sure Jerry has, and I'm sure Chris has. And then 20 years later, something happens to you, and you go, "Oh no, it's real." These things can happen. I wasn't born thinking that these things were real. Jerry wasn't, Mark wasn't, Chris wasn't. No, all these people in the chat. Something has happened that has resonated. That's made you acknowledge that this thing is real. There's something else there, and it's not just about this life. There's something else behind the curtain.
Yeah, I remember the first time. I mean, for years I denied it. I didn't want to believe it, And then when I started working with prisoners to interfere with these patterns, one after another, the ones I was working with, they'd come in and they'd say they don't like what you're doing. They're getting pissed off, and these prisoners didn't know each other. I mean, it was a big unit. So one day, one guy comes in, and he goes, "They want to talk to you." And that had never happened before. It was always, we talked through the prisoner. The prisoner would say, "The voices are telling me this." And I'd say, "Well, tell them to go stick their head in the toilet or something." He was always the intermediate. This time they wanted to talk to me directly. So this guy came in without an appointment, which is something I allowed the ones I was working with closely to do. He said, "They want to talk to you." So I brought him in, sat him down, and closed the door. And I said, "Well, what do they have to say?" And these words came out of his mouth. "You have no right to interfere with our way of life." And I sat there like stunned. And the prisoner went, "That wasn't me. I swear that wasn't me. I didn't say that. That was them who said that." Now, again, that would be a very dangerous thing for a prisoner to do to a prison psychologist. But he was honest. He said, "That wasn't my words. I didn't say that. They said that."
And when I first heard you, that story, it was that story that got me. I think
That's
it's
what got
a
me
lot of
too.
people,
My denial system just collapsed at that point. It just fell apart.
Amazing. Lovely to meet you anyway, Jerry. I was so excited about this. Thank you, Jerry.
You're more than welcome.
Thanks, guys. Thanks for making my night, making my year.
Yeah. Well,
I never talked to anybody like this before. It's the first time I've ever met anybody like this. So
yeah, he's a pretty unique guy. And we're glad to have him on. I think this is the 5th time now, Jerry. He's been on.
I love being on your show.
You were the first person we interviewed, chatted with, other than our own stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, you were.
Thanks, Dom. Thanks for bringing it out.
Yeah.
Thanks for bringing it out.
All right, guys, we will love you and leave you. Have a good evening. Thanks once again, Jerry. Thanks, Mark.
Cheers, Mark.
We will say bye. And
thanks, guys.
Yeah, so thanks for tuning in, everybody. We will see you next time. We won't have a show. There's not going to be a show released on Saturday as usual because we've done this one. But we are recording in the background. We've recorded 2 full 2-hour episodes of the Huxley Brave New World Order. And there's going to be 4 initially. And there's going to be about between 8 and 10 hours worth of recordings there on that. I think we're going to do some probably coming up, hopefully, with Mark Devlin on. He's had a preview of a couple of the videos, and we're going to do a preview show. So that should be interesting as well. So we will see you again. Thanks all for tuning in. See you next time. Bye.
Cheers, bye.